Well, thanks for coming to the tavern. Yeah, so I guess I'll just, make the plug since we're streaming too, but Liz and Michael both, unfortunately, were not able to make it tonight. Michael got sick, quite sick, and Liz cracked a tooth and had to get emergency surgery. So, this is actually the first forecast that I've ever done. And, yeah, I'm quite excited for it. So, flying solo tonight on this. But I'm really, really glad that you guys are here. And, yeah, I do open it up for as much participation as you guys want. We can make this a total conversation. So, yeah, so let's get into it. Got my handy dandy notes here. So I figured I want to just go over. I'm going to do an overview of the whole month. So just the different transits of the month in chronological order. And then we'll go back and do an analysis for each one of them.
For December?
For December. All for December. Yeah. So, and I don't know, maybe worth noting, but Saturday, Mars entered its shadow period. Yeah, we're going to have a Mercury retrograde in December. So, yeah. Let's start at the top. So, December 1st, Mercury is going to ingress into Capricorn, and then that's going to happen at about 9:45 in the morning. So this is all for New York City time, our time zone, because I know Joel is watching in Nashville. That's why I'm saying that. He's on a different time zone. So, yeah, December 1st, Mercury is going to ingress into Capricorn, and then later on that day, Mercury is going to sextile Saturn. December 3rd, Venus in Libra is going to square Pluto in Capricorn. December 4th at 1:59 p.m., Venus is going to ingress into Scorpio, and shortly after, it's going to trine Saturn. December 6th, at 5 a.m., Neptune is going to station direct, but I think worth noting too, Neptune is essentially stationary for the entire month of December. Neptune is moving like 3 or 4 arc minutes for the entire month of December. But that's the day, December 6th, that it will station direct. December 8th, we're going to have Mercury trining Jupiter. December 10, Venus in Scorpio is going to oppose Jupiter. Jupiter is in Taurus. It's been in Taurus for a while now. December 11, Mercury is going to sextile Venus. December 12 at 6:30 p.m. we're going to have the new moon in Sagittarius, which will square Neptune and make an inconjunction to Uranus. Neptune is in Pisces right now. Uranus is in Taurus right now. And these are long-term transits, right? Uranus has been in Taurus for a few years. Neptune has been in Pisces for a few years. So that's December 12th, that new moon. December 13 at 1:58 a.m., Mercury stations retrograde. So this is Mercury in Capricorn making its retrograde station. So just for a little technical background, retrograde, what happens, this is on the same principle if you're on the highway and you're going faster than somebody else to pass them, it looks like the other person is moving backwards. This is the same thing that happens when a planet is retrograde in the sky. The Earth is closer to that planet than it normally is, because of the speed difference, it looks like one planet is moving backwards. So Mercury stations retrograde December 13. Mercury is going to be sextile Venus. It's going to be trine Jupiter. And again, it's been in its shadow period since November 25th. So what that means with the shadow period, this is the range of degrees on the zodiac that Mercury will then make the retrograde through. So this is starting at, it was like 22 Sagittarius, 22 degrees of Sagittarius, up to, I can't remember, it's like 8 degrees or so of Capricorn. Is that right? Let me see here. Yeah, 8 degrees of Capricorn. So that's considered the shadow period. So Mercury is going to move forward through those degrees. It's going to get to 8 degrees of Capricorn, make that station retrograde, and then move back through. December 18th, we have Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, trining Jupiter in Taurus. December 20, we have Venus in Scorpio making a semi-sextile to Mars. And then December 21st at 10:37 p.m., this is the winter solstice. So what that means astrologically is the sun is entering Capricorn. And at that time, we also have Mercury retrograde making a sextile to Saturn in Pisces, right? Saturn has been in Pisces since March of this year. Venus is also going to be opposing Uranus, and Mars in Sagittarius is going to be making an inconjunct to Uranus. So all of that on December 21st, the day of the solstice.
Peyton, what does it mean when they're in conjunct?
So inconjunct is an aspect that's 150 degrees on the zodiac.
Oh.
Right? So basically, there's conjunct,
right,
which means the two planets are in the same position on the zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's semi-sextile, which means they're 30 degrees apart. Sextile means they're 60 degrees apart. Square means they're 90 degrees apart. Trine means they're 130 degrees apart. 120 degrees apart. And then inconjunct means they're 150 degrees apart. And then opposition means that they're 180 degrees apart.
Okay.
An opposition is like a direct conflict between the two energies. They come head to head. And inconjunct really means that if you look at the signs that they're in,
Mm-hmm.
they're basically the most different that they could be. So it's not like a head butting heads, like kind of opposition.
But they're
it's
just
actually
different.
coming at totally different angles and sort of working in totally different ways. Yeah. So an inconjunct is it's a really unstable kind of aspect. Yeah. December 22nd at 1:50 p.m. is the Mercury cazimi. Cazimi is the Latin word for in the heart of the sun. So this is the exact midpoint of the Mercury retrograde cycle. So this is when Mercury comes across and it is literally in the middle of the sun. It's right where the sun is in the zodiac. This is kind of like a refresh point in the Mercury retrograde. December 23rd, we have Mercury retrograde making a semi-sextile to Pluto. So that's Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. That's back in Sagittarius at that point, making a semi-sextile to Pluto at the end of Capricorn.
So when you're talking about the particular like Sagittarius or Taurus,
Mm-hmm.
do those aspects that we know about those signs come to the fore? Or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, and we're right now. I'm just kind of going through all of the aspects of the month in chronological order, and then I'll go back and do an analysis for each one, and then we will really get into how the sign is
Okay.
affecting, right? How the sign is coming into play with the different aspects, and all of this. On December 25th, we'll have Venus in Scorpio trining Neptune. Again, Neptune in Pisces. December 26th at 7:32 p.m. we'll have the full moon in Cancer. So this is Sun in Capricorn, Moon in Cancer. And the moon in Cancer is going to make a sextile to Jupiter in Taurus. It's going to make a trine to Saturn in Pisces. And at this time, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius is going to be making a square to Neptune in Pisces. December 28th. What's happening, man? Come on in. How you feeling?
Good.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Everybody, this is Zane, Jeremy, Catherine,
Hi,
Aaliyah.
Zane.
Aaliyah?
Aaliyah.
Nice to meet you.
So, yeah, I'm just going through all of the transits chronologically, and then we'll get into analysis. The other two cats canceled on me today, so just flying solo, but open to discussion, conversation, questions, anything, as you
Awesome.
please. Yeah,
Yeah, that's why we're so late.
no worries. December 28th, we're going to have Mars in Sagittarius square Neptune in Pisces. December 29, Venus in Scorpio is making a sextile to Pluto in Capricorn. And then December 30 at 9:28 p.m., Jupiter in Taurus is stationing direct. So Jupiter has been retrograde since it's like beginning of September, and it'll station direct. So that's all the transits for the month, and just some kind of overarching themes that I was looking at for the month. Some stuff that was just kind of standing out more globally. There's a lot going on in terms of like Sagittarius and Capricorn and things moving from Sagittarius into Capricorn, right? We have Mercury in Sagittarius right now. It's going to be moving into Capricorn in the month, and then it's going to retrograde coming back into Sagittarius, right? We have the Sun in Sagittarius, and then on the solstice it moves into Capricorn, and Mars is in Sagittarius. So the feeling, as I see it right now, is really about having a plan and being able to enact it, or having a vision and then being able to come up with a detailed, organized plan, right? Sagittarius is very much about vision. It's about sort of long-term scope. It is the archer's arrow. So this is focusing on something that's far off in the distance, and being able to hit the mark. And Capricorn is the mountain goat. And if you think about Capricorn as starting at the winter solstice, you think about the cycle of the sun as being a sine wave, right? The winter solstice is the lowest point on that sine wave. And Capricorn is the mountain goat, and the mountain goat essentially has one job, and that's start at the very bottom and just take one step after the other to climb to the top of the mountain. So there is this certain relationship of Sagittarius moving to Capricorn, having the vision, but then being able to bring that into reality. And I think there's a lot of that going on this month, especially with the way that Mercury is moving from Sagittarius into Capricorn, coming back into Sagittarius. We have the Venus in Scorpio opposing Uranus and Jupiter. Uranus and Jupiter are both in Taurus, and they've been in Taurus for a while. Again, Uranus has been in Taurus for the past 5 years, and Jupiter has been in Taurus. Wow, I have to double check that. We're coming up on a year of Jupiter in Taurus. And there's quite a bit of tension between the Scorpio signature and then Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus. So it's kind of like looking for more depth in relationship, yet wanting more freedom and exploration, right? Uranus and Jupiter are very much about freedom. Jupiter is all about how you expand your psychological and philosophical perspective in life. And Uranus is all about how you break down structure. So the two of them together are looking for a lot of freedom. But Venus in Scorpio is looking much more for emotional depth. It's looking for closeness. It's looking for not necessarily warmth as much as it's looking for maybe its own comfort. It's looking for sometimes possession in a way, emotional possession. So I think that's a big theme coming through too. And also Venus moves through the entire sign of Scorpio in December. So moving through Scorpio, it's going to make a trine to both Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. So the Neptune's going to kind of bring out more of an idealistic quality of what Venus is about, but Saturn is going to bring out more of a structured quality in what Venus is about there. And then Mars and Sun in Sagittarius are making squares to those planets, right? So a trine, the energy is going to be very flowing. It's going to be reinforcing in a way. So, right where Venus and Scorpio trining Neptune is going to, it's going to have a strong ideal, and it's going to feel very grounded in that. The squares, right, to the planets in Sagittarius, there's going to be more of a rub. There's going to be more of like a kind of individualized willpower energy coming out of the Sagittarius configurations. And then the Pisces configurations, I see it as they kind of ask Sagittarius, like, well, did you think about everybody else? Pisces is much more about the collective in this kind of way. And then with Mercury making the retrograde, right, in Sagittarius, so there isn't necessarily such a clear logic function in this. So this is just kind of a overall umbrella. Yeah, so now let's get to the specific transits. I'm so glad you're here, Catherine.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm learning.
Yeah. All right, so top of the month, December 1st. This is 9:45 a.m. on December 1st. This is the Mercury ingress into Capricorn. So Mercury is in Sagittarius right now, right? So Mercury is really, it correlates to the left brain. It's the logic function, it's communication, it's how you take in new information, it's rationalizing, it's analyzing. In Sagittarius, it can be a little bit scattered. It can be a little bit all over the place. It's interested here, it's interested there. Sagittarius is very adventurous. So it kind of takes Mercury's like curious side and really expands upon that. So the Mercury ingress into Capricorn is more about bringing in groundedness, really. And again, Saturn is in early Pisces. So when Mercury enters Capricorn, pretty soon after that, it's going to make an exact sextile to Saturn. And a sextile to Saturn brings an opportunity for deepening structure, really. Capricorn is the sign ruled by Saturn. So Saturn really has a lot of sway in this configuration. Mercury coming into Capricorn is it's going to be a lot more grounded. It's going to be a lot more structured than it has been. This is right, again, where I was saying it's about being able to make a plan, right? Where Mercury in Sagittarius was more having ideas and maybe having visions. Mercury coming into Capricorn is going to say, okay, how do I actually make those? You know, what is the step-by-step program to bring this into reality? You know, this is an interesting point as well, because 0 Capricorn, right? So when Mercury enters Capricorn, it's entering and it's at 0 degrees Capricorn. 0 degrees Capricorn is also the point of the Mercury Cazimi, which is happening on December 22nd. So this is something that you can watch for in your own experience, right? On December 1st, you can see what's going on that day. What's happening with your own communication? What's happening with your own kind of mental chatter? Where are you? And you can expect to see that theme or see that archetype come back around December 22nd. So that will be when Mercury's moving retrograde, and it makes the Cazimi with the Sun. So you might have more insight, is what I'm saying, when it gets to December 22nd. But it's an interesting little personal experiment to make note of that happening.
And it's so soon.
And it's so soon, right? We're only, what, like 4 days away? This is going to happen on Friday.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was just going to look it up on my phone, and I'm counting in my head.
Yeah, this is the ingress. The ingress into Capricorn is happening on Friday. The Cazimi does not happen until December 22nd, you know? But it's just, there's an interesting linkage between those 2 days, you know? So, and in a way, this is like, this is part of how you, on a personal level, can learn more about, like, what does this planet mean to me, right? Mercury is going to mean what it's going to mean to me, but you can take that time and just make a mental note on Friday, what's going on in terms of my logic, communication, how am I dealing with data coming into me, you know, how am I thinking about numbers, how am I thinking about logic, reason, things like this. And then see what happens on December 22nd. And it will give you a lot of insight into what Mercury is about for you and how it's functioning and how you're relating to it. You know? December 3rd, Venus is squaring Pluto. So this is Venus at the end of Libra, squaring Pluto at the end of Capricorn. So Pluto has been in Capricorn. It entered Capricorn in like 2008. Yeah, it's been in there for a long time. And it was in Aquarius for like 6 or 8 months within the past year. But it's been back in Capricorn now for a handful of months. So Pluto in Capricorn, because Pluto is about metamorphosis, it's about restructuring, it's about looking into the depths. And Capricorn, again, is about structure. You know, Capricorn is about, it's the mountain goat, one step after the other. Pluto really brings a kind of primal quality to whatever it touches. It can also just want to rip things apart and totally start new. Yeah, the face says it all. So, Venus squaring Pluto, because Venus is in Libra, and Venus is the ruler of Libra. Libra is really like, I see Venus as being like the yang side. Libra as being the yang side of Venus. This is really kind of about projecting needs and wanting to be able to meet other people's needs. Venus and Libra. Kind of like a lower manifestation of Venus and Libra is people pleasing. So the way that I was looking at this particular configuration is almost like, because, let me back up. The South Node is also in Libra right now. So the South Node this is the south node and north node are the nodes of the moon. And the nodes of the moon are where the orbital pathway of the moon intersects the orbital pathway of the Earth around the sun. These points are important because they create eclipses, right? When the nodes align with the sun, the Earth, and the moon, we have eclipses. And we did just have eclipses, right? We had an eclipse close to this point. At the end of Libra, we had a solar eclipse in the middle of in the middle of October. And then we had a lunar eclipse right around Halloween, like 2 days before Halloween. So the south node brings this sort of like quality of holding things back. It can be a little negative. It can be a little like something that needs to be worked on, something that needs to be overcome, or something that just needs to be kind of shed away. You know? So Venus is very close to the south node when it's making this square to Pluto. So I'm looking at it as being like Venus is kind of making this excessive people-pleasing thing with Libra. And then the square from Pluto feels like Pluto's kind of asking, well, what are you doing? What are you actually doing? Are you just kind of like being cute and making nice and socializing? Because Pluto in Capricorn is much more about work, you know, and bringing that depth and the primal quality to work and having a goal, having something to work towards, having something to show for time spent, you know. And Venus, again, it's close to that point of the solar eclipse that we had back in October. So, you know, I think that transit is going to relate to that solar eclipse in a way. I think it's going to have something to do with deepening the experience of that solar eclipse. Because again, Pluto is really bringing the depth out of anything that it touches, you know. So the solar eclipse happened in the middle of October, so this is another, you know, one that you can take note of for yourself, what was happening for you in the middle of October, and see if anything around that archetype, especially in the way that you are relating to other people, in the way that you're relating to people in relationship, whether it be an intimate one-on-one relationship or whether it be something that's platonic or something that's more just kind of light friendship, this kind of thing. But Libra is all about relationship between two people. So, you know, the solar eclipse, I think, is bringing out a certain archetype in that. It's bringing out something that needs to be examined. And then Venus coming to this same point and making a square to Pluto is going to deepen the reflection of it. It's going to bring out even more of the relationship side of the archetype. And then Pluto is going to be looking under the surface. How are you really relating to these people? How do you really feel about these people? And what are you doing? I think that's a big part of it. Libra can stay very surfacey. And Pluto says, no, we're not staying surfacey. We're going to the bottom of this. December 4 at 1:59 p.m. Venus is going to ingress into Scorpio. And then later on that day, Venus is going to make a trine to Saturn in Pisces. This archetype does not feel that different from the prior day of Venus square Pluto, right? Pluto is considered to be the modern ruler of Scorpio, and the archetypes are very similar in a way. Scorpio, again, is about depth. It's about transformation. Sex, death, and transformation. These are the big things of Scorpio, and Scorpio really wants to know what's under the surface, right? Where Libra liked to keep things light and nice and comfortable and, you know, pleasant. Scorpio is not interested in that at all. Scorpio is very much interested in the truth and the bottom of things and what are you really feeling. You know? So Venus going into Scorpio, it feels like the Venus function is becoming more inward now. And then with the trine to Saturn, Saturn is giving it sort of a structure for more depth exploration. So to me, I see that there's starting to be a bit of a storyline, starting with that eclipse back in the middle of October, Venus coming around to the point of the eclipse in Libra, exploring the archetypes through the way that we're relating to people, and then moving into Scorpio, which sort of brings that relationship function more inward. How are you relating to yourself, right? Because Venus fundamentally is how you relate to yourself, and how you relate to yourself then informs how you're relating to other people. And then the Saturn is giving you the structure to do that. Saturn helps with step-by-step processes. Saturn might give you ways of understanding it for yourself, right? Where Scorpio can kind of get lost in its own abyss sometimes. And it can really spiral into the depths of things. Saturn is going to keep it grounded, right? Saturn is going to keep things in reality. It's going to sort of keep that perspective on it, you know. So I think it looks like a really good day, actually, to kind of recollect and see some of the things that have been happening. It seems like a good day to meditate at home for a little while, actually.
Which day is that?
That's December 4. Yeah, so the ingress happens right in the middle of the day, 1:59 p.m. December 4 is, I feel like I should have a calendar.
You should. Is it a Monday?
It's a week from
A
today.
Tuesday?
Yeah.
It's a week from today.
Yeah.
There you go.
I made a little Venus Scorpio calendar now.
Yeah.
although I got a little less scary because you mentioned the Saturn Pisces trine. I'm like, alright.
Yeah.
It'll be alright.
Yeah. Definitely. So there you go, Monday, December 4. December 6th, Wednesday, December 6th, at 5 in the morning, Neptune stations direct. Again, Neptune is essentially stationary for the entire month, right? Neptune starts at the beginning of December, 24 degrees and 54 minutes. And by the end of December, it's at 25 degrees and 4 minutes. So, it moves 10 arc minutes, which is nothing. 10 arc minutes is like the width of the moon in the sky, actually. So it's essentially stationary, but on December 6th, it is stationing direct. When it stations direct, it is in opposition to the moon. Neptune opposite the moon is very much about idealism. Neptune has been in Pisces again for a few years. Neptune in Pisces is very much about ideals. It's very much about, it's like the sea of the collective unconsciousness. Neptune in Pisces totally understands that all things are connected, that all things are absolutely in unity. It's very much about mysticism. It brings an interest into the occult and things like this. In opposition to the moon, this really kind of brings out the idealistic qualities even more so of Neptune. And I think it brings out kind of like a self-sacrificing side to it, right? So this is going to be the moon in Virgo. And Virgo, especially moon in Virgo, is very much about service. And it's about sacrificing your own wants, needs, desires in service of something else. And Neptune in Pisces is going to be service of like kind of some great spiritual quest or the divine or something like this, you the direct station is just going to bring a little more forward motion into what Neptune is about. I don't think that this is going to be a very strong moment. It's going to be something that will be felt more moving forward. You know? But that's happening December 6th. On December 8th, we have Mercury in Capricorn trining Jupiter in Taurus. And this is sober, grounded thought and perspective. Again, Mercury in Capricorn is just grounded, careful logic, rational thinking. Jupiter in Taurus, because Jupiter is about expansion, but Taurus is very grounded. It's the fixed Earth sign. So this is really keeping your need for expansion grounded in reality, you know, and you know, with Mercury in Capricorn, it's really thinking about how do I want to expand, how do I want to branch out, and how can I actually do that in reality. It's going to be more about slow, careful growth. And then on December 10, Venus in Scorpio is going to oppose Jupiter. This is again, wanting to take it easy and like wanting to just enjoy the pleasures. Jupiter in Taurus is very much likes comfort and pleasure and easy things. And Venus opposite Jupiter, it wants to be comfortable and maybe takes it a little bit too far in a way, you know. And I think the Venus in Scorpio is going to be looking for a lot of kind of emotional comfort. So, you know, we're starting to see this kind of interesting thing unfold where, you know, the Mercury and Capricorn stuff is happening, and that's bringing a lot of like rational thinking and planning and things like this. But Venus in Scorpio is not rational, it's very, very emotional. It's very inward. It's very driven by its emotions and its desires. So I think there's going to be just this kind of interesting balance, or maybe just flip-flop playing out. You know, seeing that happen. And I think that Venus opposite Jupiter might be a disconnect between enjoying surroundings versus being with the people that you want to be with, right? Jupiter in Taurus is going to enjoy what it's around, but the Venus in Scorpio is going to want to be around particular people, and it's going to be very specific about that, you know. And I just see the possibility of the Venus being a little unhappy with the people that it's around at that time. And then on December 11, these archetypes I think are going to come together a little bit, because we're going to have Mercury in Capricorn making a sextile to Venus. So again, the sextile is an aspect of opportunity, you know. And the energies can reinforce each other, but you have to sort of take advantage of it, you know. And I think this is an opportunity to bring Mercury's clarity of thought together with Venus's like sort of emotional drive in Scorpio. And again, kind of back to this theme of like having a vision and making a plan, really, you know. Venus is going to have a very strong vision in Scorpio, and Mercury is going to be able to give it a plan. So this becomes about, you know, what do I want? What do I desire? What am I driven for? And then how am I actually going to get to that? You know, there's going to be there's going to be more clarity on that front. December 12th at 6:30 p.m. we're going to have the new moon in Sagittarius, and it's going to make a square to Neptune and an inconjunct to Uranus. So the new moon in Sagittarius this is like setting the compass, really. You know, Sagittarius is the archer, so it's kind of setting the crosshairs on something, and it brings a long-ranging vision that, again, right, is going to be developed in Capricorn, right? Because after the sun moves through Sagittarius, it's going to move into Capricorn. In conjunction with Uranus and the square to Neptune, I think is going to bring instability, and it's going to bring a lack of clarity in a way, right? Neptune can create a lot of illusion. So where the sun and a new moon in Sagittarius is going to be more personal, egoic, willpower driven, Neptune in Pisces is, again, it's going to be very much about the collective, but like the collective unconscious, you know, which is something that it's not necessarily the easiest to contact all the time. And this is something that if it comes into play and you're not ready for it to be in play, it can just confuse the issue, right? So kind of at worst, it can just bring a lack of clarity, and at best, you know, I think if you look for it and work towards it, it could bring kind of like divine inspiration at that time. And the in conjunction with Uranus is gonna bring more instability, not like a lack of clarity, but instability, right? Sagittarius is very adventurous, and I think making it in conjunction to Uranus, because Uranus is so spur of the moment, it's very sudden, and its energy is very explosive and electric. I don't think that this new moon is going to be so settled. It's going to be more like, what's really going on? Where am I supposed to be? I feel like I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be somewhere else, but I don't really know where that somewhere else is. You know, I think it's going to be more have this type of feeling to it. December 13, at 1:58 a.m., we have the Mercury station retrograde. So again, this is where Mercury is going to get to 8 degrees of Capricorn, and then it will appear to start moving backwards on the ecliptic through the sky. When it stations, it's going to be sextile Venus in Scorpio. It's going to be trine Jupiter in Taurus. And again, it's been in the shadow period since November 25th. So you can look at the archetypes that are coming up from November 25th up to December 13 and expect these things to be re-examined, right? Retrograde periods are all about redo, re-examine, rethink, you know. Mercury retrograde particularly just takes more focus with communication. You should double check your work in a Mercury retrograde, because it makes you kind of go back and rethink these things. I think with the sextile to Venus and the trine to Jupiter, this is like a focus on diplomacy, really, because Mercury is about communication. Making the sextile to Venus, this is going to be focus on communication and taking the opportunity to create relationships with other people. And Jupiter is, you know, considered the greater benefic. So a trine to Jupiter is really going to kind of want to make all parties happy, you know. So I think that this Mercury retrograde, you know, while going backwards through Capricorn, it's going to be kind of like practical diplomacy. What's the best way that I can make all of the parties involved, you know, feel okay, you know? I said, given the time of year, given that we are around the holiday season at this point, I think also the sextile with Venus is probably going to indicate more examining the way that you communicate with your family members, right? Because Venus is all about relationship, and it's a matter of circumstance that in December a lot of family members are around. So, I think those are the relationships that are probably going to be pushed to the forefront generally for most people at this time.
What aspect is like illuminating that?
This is Mercury retrograde sextile Venus. Yeah. So the Mercury retrograde just re-examining your communication, and Venus taking an opportunity to examine how you're communicating in relationship.
What does a sextile emphasize?
So sextile is really like an aspect of opportunity. It's kind of like an opportunity to connect the two energies. They can work together and can reinforce each other, but it's not like they're just going to naturally do it as in a trine. Sextile is half of a trine. You get like half as much reinforcement, and if you put in the work of the other half, you'll get it. That's kind of the way that I look at a sextile. So it's like an opportunity to link the archetypes, right? And so the Venus is, Venus in Scorpio is really, it's asking, what do I want and what do I desire? It's really, what do I desire? What do I desire deeper down? And Mercury is going to be, how am I communicating that? And how am I kind of acting on a daily basis to accomplish that? And I think there could be an aspect to it of how am I communicating with the people I'm in relationship with about the things that I really want, or what I'm really about, or where I'm really headed. And I think there's an aspect of this too, right? Mercury is going to move retrograde through those first degrees of Capricorn and then back into Sagittarius. And again, I think it's bringing up this theme of bringing the groundedness, bringing this kind of sober clarity to a vision, really. Sagittarius is not necessarily grounded, but it's very visionary, and it likes the adventure of having a vision, and it likes the journey of it, and I think Mercury moving retrograde and coming back into Sagittarius is kind of going to bring something more grounded and more clear to the Sagittarian archetype. On December 18, we're going to have Mercury retrograde in Capricorn trine Jupiter in Taurus. This is the same configuration that we had on December 8, except now Mercury is moving retrograde, right? So Mercury is moving back to the same place on the zodiac and making a trine to Jupiter in the same place on the zodiac. So another moment where you kind of have these two linked days where you can see what's happening for you on December 8th, and then how are you coming back to that on December 18th, right? And again, I think, the Mercury trine Jupiter is just about sober, grounded thought. Jupiter brings more expansiveness to the Mercury function. Mercury is going to want to look at what's right in front of its face all the time. Jupiter is going to say, but what's out there? It wants to see the world more. So Jupiter kind of opens Mercury up a bit. But they're both in earth signs. It's going to stay very grounded and it's going to stay very clear, but there's definitely a linkage between those 2 days. And then on December 20, we have Venus in Scorpio making a semi-sextile to Mars. So a semi-sextile, they're 30 degrees apart. This is half of a sextile. The semi-sextile is more related to the inconjunct aspect, right? Two signs that are next to each other are very different in a lot of ways. So this is Scorpio and Sagittarius. Scorpio is very inward. It's very emotional. It's very deep emotional. Sagittarius is much more outward. You know, Sagittarius is Scorpio is a very downward kind of energy. It very much draws downward and draws inward, and Sagittarius is more like kind of exploding outward. You know, Sagittarius is more ego, willpower driven, and Scorpio is more emotionally desire driven.
Sorry, what is in Sagittarius there?
Mars. This is Mars and Sagittarius. Yeah. And Venus and Mars together are really like a pair of opposites. Venus is the function of attraction, where Mars is the function of assertion. You know? And so I see this, it could kind of go two different ways. And this is like the Mars archetype may be more pronounced. And there's a feeling really of being like too tied down and wanting more freedom, which I think this way is more likely because we would have just had that new moon in Sagittarius, and the new moon was making it in conjunct to Uranus. Again, an archetype of instability, wanting change, wanting wild adventure, you know? So I think that Mars is going to want that as well. Mars in Sagittarius loves adventure. It's, you know, Mars in a mutable fire sign. This is Mars just kind of like blowing around. Mars is like it's like a forest fire in high winds when Mars is in Sagittarius. It just kind of blows around and burns everything. Not necessarily in such a bad way, right? Not in a destructive way, but it's that kind of energy where it can really just kind of blow around and ignite anything, you know? Mars likes to be unbounded in Sagittarius. And the Venus in Scorpio, it wants to be bounded in a way. Venus in Scorpio almost wants to own, or it wants to be owned emotionally, really. It looks for the quality of closeness that almost has like possessiveness in it. So these two archetypes are incredibly different, you know. Venus wanting that like very close contact and sort of wanting it to not just for a comfort thing, but sort of to like appease a certain emotional vulnerability. And then Mars wanting more freedom, Mars wanting to get out and have an adventure. They're really pulling in two different ways. I see the Mars archetype as being more powerful. Again, just because of that new moon happening in Sagittarius. The stage is kind of set for Mars's energy to have that. So then, you know, Venus in Scorpio can kind of create a feeling of emptiness or just like a lack, right? Mars is going to get that adventure, right? If that's what happens for you on the new moon and you say, I want more adventure in my life, Mars is going to actually bring that adventure to you. But Venus in Scorpio creating this aspect is going to give a sort of feeling of emotional emptiness in that, you know. You'll feel like I fulfilled the thing I wanted, but I'm not fulfilled, in a way. And then December 21st at 10:37 p.m., this is the winter solstice. So again, winter solstice, this is astrologically the sun entering Capricorn. So moving out of Sagittarius and entering Capricorn. At this time, we also have Mercury retrograde sextile Saturn, Venus in Scorpio opposing Uranus in Taurus, and Mars in Sagittarius making an inconjunct to Uranus in Taurus. So there are a lot of archetypes that are at play. And the solstice, this moment it's definitely going to shape the following 30 days of the sun moving through Capricorn. And it also shapes the whole winter, really. It's going to shape the season. So the archetypes that are present here are going to, I think, be developed over the following 3 months until we have the spring equinox in March. So in a way, they're kind of like two archetype groups that are at play at this moment. On one hand, there's the conjunction with Mercury, because Mercury is very close to the sun at this point. They are essentially conjunct. And Mercury is making a sextile to Saturn, right? And Mercury and the sun are in Capricorn, which is Saturn's sign. This is bringing that slow, careful, grounded thought. Same thing I keep saying, making a plan, being the mountain goat that climbs the mountain. And then on the other hand, we have Mars in Sagittarius making the inconjunct to Uranus, which is this like rapid, electric, adventurous, ungrounded sort of energy that there's no plan. It's totally improvised, and it just wants to be like bombastic and adventurous. But then Venus is kind of thrown into the mix in that archetype group, because Venus is making also an opposition to Uranus. And we're still kind of in the zone of that Venus making a semi-sextile to Mars. So that kind of like electric, wild, rapid, bombastic energy is probably going to play out more in the relationship zone, right? So the Sun, Mercury, Saturn thing, this is probably more about work, and whatever work you're doing. And then the Mars, Uranus, Venus is more in your relationships. How are you relating to people? How are relationships affecting your life? Are they giving you the freedom that you want, or do you have so much freedom and you're not getting the emotional closeness that you want? And these two groups of archetypes are separated a little bit. So then the following day, December 22nd at 1:50 p.m., we have the Mercury cazimi. So again, cazimi is Latin for in the heart of the sun. This is the exact moment of Mercury retrograde conjunct the sun. This is the middle of the Mercury retrograde cycle. And in a way, it's kind of like a reset on Mercury retrograde. When something passes through the sun like this, the sun kind of revitalizes it in a way, So this is kind of an opportunity to like reset, how have I been communicating? How do I want to communicate? And I think that it's interesting that this cazimi is taking place at 0 degrees Capricorn. Again, this is the winter solstice point. And that's the darkest, quietest point on the zodiac, So this moment of Mercury cazimi feels very inward and very reflective in that way. This feels like another really good moment to meditate alone at home and reflect. And ask yourself the questions about your communication that you want to ask, and set an intention. December 23rd, Mercury retrograde. At this point, back in Sagittarius, makes a semi-sextile to Pluto. So this feels like the kind of grounded, thorough thought of Mercury in Capricorn now just becomes this subterranean labyrinth of thought with Mercury moving retrograde, and now it's contacting Pluto, right? So where Mercury in Capricorn was in this reality firmly on the ground, you know, moving backwards into Sagittarius with the effect of Pluto on it, it just takes it even deeper. Now we are below ground, totally below the surface. I think that, especially following the Cazimi, following this sort of like reflective moment, there's a possibility, or a lot of potential really, for Mercury kind of spiraling out of control a little bit here. You know, now this sort of like inward reflection just becomes like, you know, a spiral of like going too far into the depths in a way, you know, losing the sense of groundedness, you know, because where Sagittarius is the archer's bow, it could be pointed upwards into the sky, or it could be pointed down into the ground, and it's still going to go just as far if you take it there. So I think that's a moment to just go in with a little bit of perspective on what's happening, and, you know, decide how deep you want to go, or if you want to go into the depths at that time. December 25th, we have Venus in Scorpio making a trine to Neptune in Pisces. This is a configuration that's all about idealism. It's on Christmas. I think that there's an aspect to this of just like kind of getting lost in the magic of a holiday, maybe enjoying the illusions of the holiday. It can feel very good. It can also feel very like kind of floating in a way, you know. So there can be a sense of like floating, and it feels great in the moment, and then all of a sudden reality comes back around and hits, you know. So I think with this particular configuration, it's just important to know that there's a lot of illusion at play and a lot of idealism coming into what's going on. December 26th at 7:32 p.m. we have a full moon in Cancer, and that full moon is going to be making a sextile to Jupiter in Taurus, a trine to Saturn in Pisces, and at the same time we have Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius squaring Neptune in Pisces. So the full moon, especially in Cancer, right? The Cancer is ruled by the moon, and Cancer is the archetypal mother. It's all about nurturance, right? The archetypal mother says, I love you because you're you. It's unconditional love. So the full moon in Cancer is about nurturance, and it's about wanting to nurture, right? I think this is, as a full moon, the sun is still in Capricorn, right? So the sun in Capricorn wants to do something. It wants to have some sort of thing to work on, a kind of obstacle to overcome. So the full moon in Cancer brings a want or a need to nurture. And the trine to Saturn gives it the means to do that, and the discipline to do that without draining your own energy, really. And that need and want to nurture, I think, is reinforced by the sextile to Jupiter, because Jupiter is very much, it wants to help. So, yeah, but I think that Saturn is going to keep it contained and disciplined. You know, there's going to be a, how much can I do this right now before I'm drained, before it's too much. I think this is a very emotional and very reflective full moon. And while Saturn is giving the structure and the groundedness to the emotional side, this other configuration happening at the same time of Mercury in Sagittarius squaring Neptune in Pisces brings this kind of like confused thought into the mix, or maybe at best there's just kind of like a disconnect from the logic function. So this full moon is just much more emotionally driven and a little less logically grounded.
Peyton, I think I gotta take myself.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm very sleep deprived.
Yeah.
I got a long drive.
Do it.
But yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's cool. Yeah?
Thank you.
Are you sick? Is that why you've lost your voice?
I was kind of getting over something, but I'm like, yeah, this is just the remnants of whatever.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
It's all good.
I gotta go.
Cool, yeah.
But thank you for
Good to see you.
Thank you.
See you. See you soon.
Sleep is good.
Yeah, messed up. On December 28th, we have Mars in Sagittarius squaring Neptune in Pisces. And again, this is like there's that tension between the personal will, right? Mars is very much about willpower and expressing the ego, asserting the ego, really. And Neptune and Pisces, the collective need. There's a big tension between the two. I think that the Neptune in Pisces is at this point a stronger energy than Mars in Sagittarius, because at this point the Sun has moved out of Sagittarius. So Neptune can just kind of drain Mars's energy, right? Because Neptune has so much illusion quality to it. When Neptune contacts Mars, especially Mars in a mutable sign, then Mars ends up just kind of like running around all over the place and not really knowing where to put its energy, and it just sort of like leaks it out all over in a way, you know. So I think this moment, December 28th, is a moment to just like stop, double check, see what's really going on, you know, make sure you're not like being led astray by some illusion or false information, or just not seeing things clearly. December 29, Venus in Scorpio is going to make a sextile to Pluto in Capricorn. And then in the afternoon, Venus is going to ingress into Sagittarius. So the Venus sextile Pluto is giving an opportunity for greater emotional depth or closeness, right? So all this stuff where we've sort of talked about through the month that there could be this kind of emotional emptiness or a feeling of lack there. This is very much an opportunity to get deeper into that, understand where that lack comes from, where the emptiness comes from, perhaps. Or on the other side of it, Pluto may bring more drive to Venus to actually meet some of the desires that are coming up there. And this movement of Venus in Scorpio making the sextile to Pluto and then moving into Sagittarius, it feels like setting the sights on an emotional pursuit, really, where Scorpio gives that like desire, drive, and then Sagittarius very much feels like, you know, setting something in the crosshairs in a way, because Scorpio is incredibly focused, and Sagittarius has that kind of long-ranging focus as well. Venus going through Scorpio, even though it was opposed by Uranus in Taurus as it moved through Scorpio, it did feel more supported in a way by the other planets, especially having the trine to Saturn, right? Saturn is bringing a little more structure to the Venus function. And it had the trine to Neptune as well, so that brings a lot of idealism into the mix, but Saturn's going to keep it grounded. When Venus moves into Sagittarius, it might not be so supported anymore. This is the only thing here. Because once it moves into Sagittarius, that means it's going to be making a square to Saturn. So now, instead of Saturn giving that kind of structured support, Saturn is more just going to be kind of like putting the brakes on Venus, right? It's almost like Venus in Scorpio moves very, very slowly. And in this moment of moving out of Scorpio into Sagittarius kind of sets its sight on something, but maybe that sight is actually, it's too long ranging. And it sort of like burns itself out in a way. And that's where a square from Saturn just says, no man, you're moving too fast. You can't do all that. You know, and then Saturn just sort of like puts the brakes on it. It feels like something's very limited or maybe even blocked. You know. And then December 30th at 9:28 p.m., Jupiter stations direct in Taurus. So again, Jupiter's been retrograde since September 5th, right? So since September 5th, in some way, there's been a re-examination of the Jupiter function. Again, Jupiter is about expansion of experience. It's the expansion of your orientation to philosophy, you know. It's how you kind of like move out and experience more of the world. It's about how you orient yourself to different philosophies of life and different religions, things like that. It can also just be about more, you know, and Taurus is very much about physical objects. You know, I think there has been a side to Jupiter in Taurus that has been just kind of about amassing physical objects in a way, you know. So things to look at that may have come up over these past, 3.5 months now, since the beginning of September. Jupiter moving direct is probably going to bring more clarity to those things. That's the whole month.
Nothing on the
That was really cool.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it was like you were speaking another language, and I was starting to get it.
Oh, cool. Good.
Yeah,
Great.
it was great.
Great.
Yeah, thanks for putting in some dedication and.
I followed along on the calendar even.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was
Oh, wow.
helpful.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, no,
Really.
it was really thoughtful and researched. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah. Man, I woke up early this morning and I had gone through like maybe half of the month. I was like, I just got to go through the rest of these things, and I was down to the last few, and I was like, man, there are gonna be 2 other people. I don't have to write down my thoughts. And then something told me this morning. I was like, you never know, man. You might be high and dry. So yeah, so just going through it, and yeah.
And it's also
Gonna hold me to it.
fascinating thinking about the people that you know
Mhm.
who are Sagittarius or Scorpio.
Exactly.
I mean, it is so accurate.
Exactly.
Just
Mhm.
kind of blows my mind.
Exactly. Yeah, and I didn't preface this, but you know, part of all of this too with the forecast, you can, you know, however much you might know your own chart, you can look at where these things are happening within your own chart. So if you have, for example, a Sagittarius sun or a Sagittarius moon, if your ascendant is Sagittarius, or maybe you have a lot of planets in Sagittarius, you might have Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter in Sagittarius, something like this. any of the things happening this month in Sagittarius are going to be accentuated even more, right? Maybe on the other side you have a bunch of things in Capricorn, but nothing in Sagittarius. You know, maybe you have Sun conjunct Mercury on the ascendant in Capricorn. If this is your natal chart, the things that are happening in Capricorn are going to be greatly accentuated, and the things in Sagittarius might not be that important for you, where they might just be a lot more subtle and in the background. You know, so right, like, so you have Gemini Sun. The things that are happening in Sagittarius are going to be very important for you because they're going to be opposing your sun. Right? So now all of the things of Mercury making semi-sextile to Pluto and Mercury making Mars making the semi-sextile to Pluto and Mars making a square to Neptune, these things are going to be heightened because Mars square Neptune is also going to involve your sun. It's going to be Mars opposing your sun and squaring Neptune. So now this archetype is deepened a little bit more, where this could almost be like a weird rash that turns up and you don't really know why, right? Because Mars opposing the sun, there's an inflammation quality. And then with Neptune squaring it, there's kind of an illusion of like, where is this really coming from? You know, you don't really know. So
It's just crazy. It's so interesting. And I'm starting to understand some of what you're saying, and I'm surprised.
yeah,
It's very interesting.
yeah.
And I just, I can't get it out of my head of so many of the people that I know, and what you're saying is so accurate.
Mm-hmm.
It just really surprises me.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you gonna ask something?
Actually, you immediately answered it.
Oh,
I was gonna
really?
ask like how this can relate to different sun signs.
Yeah.
You kind of
Yeah.
spoke to that.
So where do you? What's your sun sign?
Capricorn.
Capricorn. Okay. Do you know your moon?
I think Aries.
Okay. And your ascendant?
I might have it written down actually. Let me see. I know my rising.
Mm-hmm.
Leo.
Leo. Cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
ascend.
The ascendant, rising,
Yeah.
same thing. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So that's interesting. So the Capricorn sun and Aries moon, right? These are both cardinal signs. So transits happening in cardinal signs are going to be really important in that way. So the cardinal signs: Aries, Cancer, Libra,
Pisces, yeah.
Capricorn. Yeah, the first sign of each season. So the stuff happening in Capricorn. What day is your birthday?
December 31st.
December 31st. Okay. So your sun's going to be at like 9, 10, 11 degrees at Capricorn. You know. So the Mercury retrograde is going to be pretty important because Mercury is going to move and it's going to get to 8 degrees of Capricorn. So pretty much conjunct your sun. And then it's going to station retrograde. So that this particular retrograde cycle is going to have a deeper effect on it's going to have a deeper effect on you as a person and what you're doing in your life, right? Where I mean, I don't know your chart, but I don't know what you have in Capricorn. You might not have so much stuff in Capricorn. I don't really have much going on in Capricorn. So Mercury retrograde in Capricorn is really just going to be, how am I communicating? You know, but for you, it's probably going to have a deeper quality about how am I really communicating what I'm doing in my life, you know, because the sun is what are you doing in your life?
Yeah.
Really, you know, who are you as a person and what's your conscious action? What's your way of moving through reality? You know, so that Mercury retrograde there is going to bring more awareness around that.
Is the Mercury retrograde having a larger impact because of the Capricorn, or because of the signs that Mercury is moving through? Because those are Capricorn. Like
The Mercury, you're saying, like, for you, is it having more impact?
yeah, like are you drawing that there's more of an impact because of the signs that it is moving through, or because of its relationship to the sun sign?
Because of its relationship to your sun sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, like, I have Sun in Aries. If there was, not just Sun in Aries, I have a stellium in Aries. I have Saturn, Mars, Sun, South Node, Mercury in Aries. So if there's a Mercury retrograde going through Aries, that's going to be incredibly impactful for me because all of these symbols that I'm born with are in Aries. So for you, right, so it would have a similar quality for me, right? A Mercury retrograde in Aries is going to be, how am I communicating what I'm doing in my life? Am I, you know, structuring my communication well, right? This is Mercury with Saturn. Am I structuring my communication in a way that's clear and logical and easy for people to understand? That's maybe like Saturn, Venus with the Mercury retrograde, right? So the different planets that Mercury retrograde, as it's happening in the sky, is contacting, those are going to come into play, right? So, I mean, it's very possible that you have Mercury in Capricorn natally, right? If you have Sun in Capricorn, Mercury could only be in Sagittarius, Capricorn, or Aquarius.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you have a pretty good chance of Mercury being in Capricorn already. So that's, again, it's going to heighten it. If the Mercury retrograde is contacting your natal Mercury, it's going to kind of double down on that communication aspect in the examination of it. It's going to be more important for you. I don't have anything natally in the first 8 degrees of Capricorn. So there's not that much going on, really. You know, it'll make a square to my Saturn in Aries. You know, so the structural aspect of thought and communication will be heightened a little bit, but not so major. Right? But for you having the Sun there, because anything that contacts the Sun it kind of affects your biography in a way. You know, Mercury transits are fast, so there's not a lot of time for it to really work on a super deep level, but things transiting the Sun are kind of like biographical in a way. There will be a moment that you could almost describe it as a story, like, and it could even be like, man, remember that month and like, I thought I sent 10 different emails to 10 different people, but they like never went through, right? Because Mercury retrograde can be just general communication issues, right? Remember that month and I was throwing a big party and I sent out 50 invites, but something happened and the email server crashed and nobody got the invites and I had all this food and nobody came to the party, right? That would kind of be like Mercury retrograde contacting your Sun. There's this thing that happens that's biographical in a way. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Should be a fun month.
Should be a fun month. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you've got the Moon in Aries too, so Venus finishing up in Libra was big. Probably the eclipse was pretty big for you in the middle of October, because that eclipse would be, at least by sign, contacting your moon, and squaring your Sun. So that'll be a probably major point of beginning for something. So then you can look at it, it's like, what's happening now with Venus moving through Libra? Because that's going to give you Venus opposing your moon, right? So Venus opposing the moon there's a need for emotional connection in that. feeling like you have to give something to get a certain nurturance in a way, or feeling like you have to attract people to nurture you a little more. So, you know, yeah, just a little more examination of what's really going on there. How are you using Venus function?
Interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Kind of trying to, because I don't have anything. Like it'd be interesting to. I think I might do some journaling for December of like trying to keep track of like little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Because it does seem like some of the stuff that I've been working on kind of originated in October, and now I'm trying to think back. And I'm like, wait, when, what? You know,
Yeah.
but that is cool.
Right,
It's interesting.
right. I know, at the very least, all of this stuff gives really interesting signposts to
like-
kind of see how
Yeah.
time is interlocked, you know?
Yeah.
Because the months and the years don't really mean anything, you know? But seeing the archetypes move around and certain energies coming back to certain places and stuff like that, it does open your eyes to these interesting through lines in a way, you know? So, but it takes a little bit of like focus and organization to actually know, oh, when did this shit have to happen? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I'm just, forgive me if it's selfish, but now I was so behind. I'm just thinking about where you could have started, and I mean, you could take it somewhere now. Like, I won't be bashful. Like, I was just thinking about the last eclipse in general, and just this evening falling like on a lunar event. And I know there's like some techniques of like tracking events after the eclipses, right? Which me personally, I haven't really done much of. I don't know if you has there been a lunation since the second of the recent eclipse season, the one closer to the beginning of the month?
Yeah, we had a new moon.
Oh yeah, so
Right,
14
new
days
moon
ago.
in Sag.
Yeah, okay.
No, new moon in Scorpio
Yeah, the second eclipse.
a couple weeks ago. So the first eclipse there was solar eclipse. It was like
You know
September 15. It was a Saturday. So September 14. Is that right?
No, I thought
Saturday
it
or
was
Sunday?
the two. It's the middle of October and then.
Or I keep saying September. It's October. Yeah,
October
October.
14th.
October 14th, and
To the
then
beginning of November, was it?
it was right before Halloween. It was this Saturday before Halloween. It was at the 29th,
Yeah.
28th would be
the 28th.
Yep.
Yeah,
28th
so
of
the
December.
28th, and that was a lunar eclipse. So Sun in Scorpio, Moon in
Right.
Taurus. Yeah.
Yeah, because this just like the whole recent, like just the sun Mars in Scorpio has just been so. I don't know. It's like you want to get to the scorpionic depths and kind of like
Yeah.
be like maybe shed a tear about
Yeah.
it, but like you just don't because the sun is like right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been so I don't know. It's very
Mm-hmm.
strange, but
Mhm.
yeah, just I don't know, thinking about that and just like this, I don't know, just yeah, well, just from like a technical standpoint, like, are you keyed into like tracking after eclipses? I know there's certain things and events they've even talked about how they could correlate with the last October eclipse,
Yeah.
and is that mostly there were some like retrogrades and other just positionings. I don't know if you
Yeah.
have
So
any
the
room
stuff.
to elaborate on that.
What I've sort of watched, and I kind of go in and out of really watching. Like, it sometimes in
I
my
hear you.
life I'm really watching, and
Yeah.
other times in my life I'm just like doing whatever I'm doing and I don't even think about it,
Yeah,
you
same.
know? So, but when I'm watching, it's a little bit simplistic, and I just kind of keep track of like, yeah, where in the zodiac did something happen and when did it happen, you know? So with the eclipses, because that second eclipse, the lunar eclipse in Taurus, that was the last Scorpio Taurus eclipse that we had. right? Because we had the first ones back in like November of 2021. So I look at that, right? There's this whole cycle
That's
of
that cycle
eclipses.
of
Yeah,
there,
there's that
okay,
whole
yeah.
cycle of eclipses going from November 2021 up until, just a couple days before Halloween of this year. So I look at that as sort of being something that's unfolding.
So
Right.
So regardless, it's the length that the lunar nodes spend time in the signs.
That's what I look at. There
Yeah.
are other ways of looking at it too, right? There's like the Saros cycle,
Oh yeah.
which is this way, and I don't know about it yet.
Sure,
But
yeah.
I know that there is the Saros cycle, and this is a way of tracking eclipses that links. I think it's eclipses that happen like on the same degree, or maybe within the same range of degrees in the zodiac, something like that. Because I remember talking to somebody about it, and she was talking about like the Saros cycle gives you all of these eclipses that are related over the course of hundreds and hundreds
it's
of
a
years.
huge.
Yeah,
of
and
course.
they might be like 30 years apart or something like this. It's a much wider spread out cycle,
Sure.
which it's just a different way of looking at it. I think there's always a question of like, are you looking at the history of human development,
Yeah.
or are you just looking at like your life?
Right.
And are you looking at your life as a whole and how things are developing, or are you looking at like what's going on in my world right now? There's so many different
Yeah. 'Cause you can totally do
like depths of perspective to have with it, so the depth that I find myself looking at more is like the last 2 years of eclipses in Scorpio and Taurus, and seeing the way that that's unfolded,
Yeah, great place to start. Regardless,
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
Very kind of obvious
Absolutely.
right there
Yeah,
for your immediate archives.
Yeah,
Should have
exactly.
them, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and then watching stuff like, trying to keep track of something like, well, we had Venus retrograde in the summer,
Right. Yeah,
right? Which is,
yeah.
it's not that common to have a Venus retrograde. We have it like once every year and a half.
And being in Leo, where I forget. Yeah, I know it had been a while.
Yeah. So it's like, so that's something I'm gonna hold in my mind for maybe a year, and then see what comes up in Leo, right? Basically, Mercury can never be more than 27 degrees from the sun, and Venus can never be more than like 47 or 48 degrees of the sun. So wherever the sun is in the zodiac, Mercury and Venus are going to be around it, more or less, So it'll be interesting to see, like, once the sun comes back around to Leo and Mercury and Venus are doing things in that zone of the zodiac again, kind of how it relates to the Venus retrograde cycle. Just trying to keep track of like, where did it station retrograde, and where did it go back to, and where did it station direct, and what comes up there. Yeah, and then trying to keep track of like, what degree did the eclipse happen on, and then now what's passing through that degree, and how is it related, That was a big one on this.
How would that be? Like, how would when an eclipse happens at a certain degree, that kind of like imbues that degree with that vibe, kind of thing?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That's the way that I look at it. Yeah.
And you're talking for specifically closer, like Mercury, Venus, just because they travel so close for now.
No, I'm just talking about that because like, there's gonna be more activity around the sun because Mercury and Venus kind of stay around the sun. Yeah, so that's what I was saying. Like, when the sun comes back around to Leo, it'll be interesting to see what Mercury and Venus do at that time, and if it kind of relates to the Venus retrograde
From
at
the
all,
position, from when the retrograde was.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I see it as like, they're almost like two sides of it, right? There's like, an eclipse happens, right? I think the eclipse was at like 25 Libra. I think that's where it
think so.
was. It was give or take a degree. Let's say we'll call it 25 Libra. So the eclipse happens there, and somehow the like energy of the moment, yeah, it imbues that point in the sky with whatever the events of that moment are. Or the other side of seeing it is more like there's already an like infinite archetypal pool that's possible at 25 degrees Libra, right? Every 360 degrees of the zodiac has an infinite array of possibilities within a certain archetype, and each degree is different. So having an eclipse at 25 Libra unlocks that archetype and expresses it through the energy of not just a new moon, but expresses it through the energy of a solar eclipse. And a solar eclipse on the south node, which is different from a solar eclipse on the north node, right? And the thing is, at the end of the day, we don't really know, right? So I think, you know, to me, both of those explanations feel totally valid, and they work, at least for me. They work in looking at this stuff, you know. So at this moment, I think I feel a little more drawn to the second one of like, how is, and that's kind of the way I was looking at it today, right? Because I was thinking about like, okay, there was an eclipse that happened at 25 degrees Libra. How is that eclipse unlocking the archetype that's available to us at 25 Libra? And then Venus comes in, and Venus in late Libra makes a square to Pluto in late Capricorn. How are these energies unlocking sort of the same archetype, right? Because the archetypes of the planets are different, but the archetype of that point on the zodiac
It's kind of like set from
is
the
presumably the same, yeah, in some way. Whether it's just been imbued with like eclipse energy and it's sitting there still, you know, or it's just that there's this pool and it gets unlocked by certain things passing across it, you know. But now Venus is coming across. So what really is the archetype at 25 Libra? And how does Venus unlock a different side of it, or show us a different side of it, or express it in a different way than an eclipse? Because an eclipse is going to be very dynamic, you know. If you just think about, like, if you think about an eclipse that you can actually see, right? We can't see most eclipses, but when an eclipse happens and there's a solar eclipse, it's daytime, and then shit looks like it's night out, and then it's daytime again. That's wild. It's extremely dynamic. So that's part of the archetype of an eclipse. It's something extremely dynamic. It's unsettling. It changes the status quo. You know, it's a major beginning of something or a major ending of something, right? Venus isn't like that. You know, Venus doesn't like mess everything up, right? When an eclipse happens, like the animals think it's nighttime and the plants start to close up. They don't do that if Venus is just passing through 25 Libra or Venus is close to the sun. It doesn't work like that. You know, Venus works in a different way. But you see the way that like people with a Venus-Sun conjunction are. You know, you can see the way that they look. You know, people with a Venus-Sun conjunction are particularly beautiful. So what is Venus about? Venus is about like kind of beauty and sort of like almost like standard or classical beauty in a way. So then how can we see that particular energy unlocking the archetype of like a specific moment or space or point on the zodiac? I really have to pee. I'm gonna do that real quick, but we can continue this. Great.
So do you try to track some of these events yourself?
This advance kind of like paid me like sometimes.
Yeah.
There's like kind of as of lately, I don't know. instead of being as, I haven't been, maybe I should be more in the books, but it depends on the times, but there are just some, events that are kind of, and like placements that are just kind of inevitable, like especially even if just whatever, even, I can, just unit sign based where it's like undeniable. There's like an undeniable influence sometimes of just certain, planetary and like luminary positions.
Do you tend to retroactively look back to explain, or do you look forward, or both?
Yeah, definitely both. It's kind of like how Pam was saying of going, like how hyper personalized. Like that's, I don't know, that's a lot simpler for me in a way. Just because you know you, or you should know you, so you can kind of start like personally. I've been like working on doing an in-depth kind of dive at like as close to certain dates. I mean, it's like just for me, for my personal life, to get through like, I don't know, like going into old email accounts, like the one I made in 2001, although I can only go back to like 2007, and then lucky for us, like we have that bit of time, but I guess before you gotta follow like paper trails and family stories for your personal life. That is, obviously there's like a world of historical study to get into, but that's like, that's a different, that's a different thing. Of course.
Yeah. Is that something you're doing now? You're like going through and trying to track transits and.
Yeah, I just want to make like just a points on a timeline with like just certain events. Honestly, I'm gonna look at them astrologically later, and it's kind of like a personal mission, just kind of a personal shortcoming that I'm like not so good at that. I started like learning about it for personal uses.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm really trying to get into like mundane.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah.
It seems like a pretty wholesome journey, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it's easier said than done. It's like I might as well just expand on my foundation at this point, and it's just a good thing to do anyway.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, the mundane stuff is very interesting. It's interesting because there's a lot of different things that you can look at. Like you can just look at the news and see what's going on and try and correlate. Yeah.
In horary, it's probably a good mundane technique, I would think.
Yeah. I don't do horary at all.
What?
Yeah, I saw you posted you had like a horary book that you got, didn't you?
Yeah, somebody just dropped off 2 boxes of astrology books the other day.
If this ain't
Yeah, and there
very of this lunation.
Yeah, and there were like 2 or 3 books on horary astrology. There was one by Mark Edmund Jones that was like horary astrology. Horary is like asking a question, Yeah. And I think it deals with electional astrology too. I think there's a lot of overlap. So electional is like picking a time to do something, like picking the most auspicious time to get married or buy a house or this kind of thing. Yeah. And horary is like, I think it's more the kind of divination thing almost. It's like asking a question and you ask it at the moment, and then certain things in the chart represent certain sides of the question, and it like gives you an answer. This kind of thing. Yeah. I don't do horary.
Freezing the pendulum.
Freezing the pendulum. Yeah. Exactly. So, yeah. I really appreciate you guys for coming out.
This was fun.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I hope it was helpful or insightful. Or,
Very fun.
Yeah. Cool. This is the first one I've done. First forecast I've ever done, and the first forecast night at the tavern. And really want to do these. Like, do them every month. Just pick a day. Maybe the last Monday of every month will be forecast night.
Sounds cool.
Yeah. Just go through them. So. Yeah.
I love that the first one fell on
On the full moon.
Yeah. On the nice Sag full moon. You can,
Yeah.
That'll give you a wealth of momentum to keep it,
Yeah, right.
Sag, it's such like I don't know. I see Sag as such like an ascension thing. That's like the word. Like I just like woke up in the middle of the night. It's just like that is it. It's ascending to like
Yeah.
and very deep point. It's like a rebound point. You're saying from like Scorpio to Sag too is the depths and versus as far as you can go.
Yeah. Totally. Well, it very much is like, the Scorpio's kind of got the like ashes thing, and the rebirth thing.
Yeah.
Sagittarius is like rising out of the ashes. I think it's got that side to it. Ascension. That's a good word.
Yeah, it's
I like that.
very of this time.
Yeah. It is.
Somebody's liking your stream.
I guess so. Somebody says, alright. Oh, it just says low power. Huh. Did you do it? I don't know. Huh.
Hopefully no one will give me any troubles for parking across the street.
No.
Right?
That's my property, also.
Oh, across the street. Cool. Yeah, because I didn't even notice the road, but then I got out of the car. I was like, oh, shit. I'm not blocking it, or maybe we're driving more.
Oh, yeah, no. It's